Chosen one, you are not listening to this by accident. You did not arrive at this moment through chance or curiosity. Something far older than time has been guiding you here. A divine appointment has been unfolding quietly in your life, drawing you to this exact message at this exact hour, because your hidden identity is ready to be remembered. Chosen one, you are standing at the edge of a revelation about who you truly are. Since childhood, there have been signs that followed you. Sensitivities you could never fully explain. Patterns that repeated through your family line. A deep awareness that you were different, set apart, carrying something unseen but heavy. These were never coincidences. They were markers placed within you, confirmations of a rare spiritual origin and a calling that runs through your bloodline. Anointed one, heaven marked you long before the world tried to define you. As it is written in Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5, before you were formed, you were known and set apart. As declared in 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 9, you are chosen, called, and appointed for a purpose beyond survival. Even Psalm 139 verse 14 reminds us that you were fearfully and wonderfully made on purpose. Chosen one. This message is an awakening, a sacred moment of recognition. What you are about to hear is not information, it is activation. Prepare your heart, because this truth is about to shift your spirit, your identity, and the path ahead of you. Chosen one. The weight you've carried was never random, and as you listen now, something in your spirit already knows that every heaviness, every strange pattern, every battle that followed your family for generations was pointing to this very moment. You've walked through seasons that felt too heavy for one person to bear, and yet here you are, breathing, rising, listening, because heaven has been revealing who you truly are piece by piece, waiting for the day your spirit would finally be ready to recognize the truth you were marked long before the world ever tried to label you. Chosen one. The reason your life has felt different is because it is different. The reason you've never blended in is because you were never meant to. Even as a child, you sensed things others ignored. You felt the shift in a room before anyone spoke. You noticed patterns in your family that others shrugged off as just how things are. You carried emotions you didn't have words for, callings you couldn't explain, and a level of spiritual sensitivity that made you feel strange, out of place, or older than your age. These weren't weaknesses or quirks. They were spiritual markers, silent confirmations of a rare identity heaven planted inside you from the beginning. And if you look back with honest eyes, you'll see it. You'll remember moments when you felt a pull inside you, even when you didn't understand why. You'll remember times when you stood at the edge of something dark and something unseen pulled you back. You'll remember the nights you cried without knowing where the tears came from, the days you felt the world pressing on your shoulders, and the quiet voice inside you that kept whispering, "There's more for you than this." Chosen one. I need you to understand this. You were not preserved by luck. You were preserved by intention. Your survival was not accidental. It was orchestrated. Heaven kept you through storms that were supposed to swallow you. Heaven shielded you from traps that were supposed to finish you. Heaven guarded your spirit, even when you didn't know you needed guarding. I know what it feels like to carry battles no one else sees. I know what it feels like to wake up with a heaviness that doesn't match the day ahead of you, to walk into rooms that feel spiritually loud or spiritually empty, to sense someone's true intentions before they say a single word. I've walked through those moments where you look around at your family and realize you're the one who feels things differently, sees things differently, responds differently. And for a long time, it feels like a burden. You wonder why you have to be the one who notices the pain others try to hide. You wonder why you're the one who feels the weight of old stories, old wounds, old patterns that don't belong to you but somehow still sit on your shoulders. You wonder why certain things hit you deeper than they hit others. But hear me, anointed one, your sensitivity is not weakness. It is inheritance. It is confirmation of the spiritual bloodline you carry. It is the echo of prayers whispered by ancestors who longed for freedom but never lived long enough to taste it. It is the proof that heaven chose you to be the one who would finally bring closure to what tormented generations before you. You've probably wondered why certain temptations chased you harder than others, why certain attacks felt personal, why certain shadows followed your family like a cycle no one could break. And maybe you looked at your own struggles and thought, why me? Why does this fight feel like it picked me? But chosen one. The fight didn't pick you. The assignment did. What you carry is the evidence that you were chosen to end what others could only endure. And if you pause for just a moment, you'll notice something remarkable. The very thing that tried to break your family line is the very thing you've been resisting your entire life, even before you understood why. That resistance wasn't just instinct, it was identity. It was the fire placed inside you before birth, the kind of fire that can melt chains instead of bowing to them. Think about how many times you felt out of place in your own environment. Think about how often you questioned your path because it didn't look like anyone else's. Think about how many times people misunderstood you, mislabeled you, or tried to shrink you because they sensed something in you they couldn't name. That wasn't rejection, it was revelation. Spirit recognizes spirit, and darkness recognizes fire. The discomfort you've caused in others wasn't because you were wrong, it was because you were marked. Even Scripture echoes this truth in Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5, reminding us that some identities are chosen long before the body ever touches the earth. And chosen one. Whether you realized it or not, heaven has been unveiling you slowly, allowing your spirit to grow strong enough to hold the truth of who you are. You are not the continuation of your bloodline's suffering. You are the interruption, the reset, the fulfillment of prayers whispered when no one else was listening. The answer they hoped would come through someone, never knowing it would come through you. And the moment you begin to see yourself through heaven's eyes, everything around you begins to shift. Chosen one. When you start to recognize the patterns that followed your family for generations, something powerful awakens inside you. You begin to see that what felt like chaos was actually a map, a spiritual trail leading you back to your true identity. The heaviness, the battles, the betrayals, the strange cycles that repeated through your bloodline were not coincidences, they were clues. Heaven was showing you what you were born to break, what you were born to transform, what you were born to rewrite. And the moment you realize that, the moment you understand that your life has been carrying a mission bigger than any one person ever told you, something shifts deep inside your spirit. You stop feeling like a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as the chosen vessel heaven has been preparing all along. Chosen one. You have to understand something essential. You were not just born into your family. You were assigned to it, assigned with intention, assigned with spiritual authority, assigned with the fire needed to confront what everyone else learned to tolerate. That's why you never fit into the places that felt normal to others. That's why you couldn't stay in relationships that your spirit outgrew long before your mind understood why. That's why environments that were comfortable for others felt suffocating to you. Your spirit has always known the truth that you were not sent here to blend in with the patterns of your bloodline. You were sent to interrupt them. And I know that interruption hasn't been easy. I know what it feels like to stand in the middle of a family legacy that didn't feel like yours and wonder why everything in you was screaming to move differently, think differently, choose differently. I know what it feels like to be the one who grows uncomfortable with things others have normalized. You see the dysfunction and your whole spirit reacts. You see the trauma and your body feels it in ways that don't make sense. You feel the emotional weight of generations sitting on your shoulders, and yet somehow deep inside you there is a quiet courage that refuses to let it continue. That courage didn't come from your upbringing. That courage came from heaven. You've always been set apart, even in rooms where you didn't feel special. You've always felt the pull to something higher, even on days you felt unworthy. And the truth is, you felt different, not because you were broken, but because you were chosen. There were moments, sometimes small, sometimes overwhelming, where you felt a presence guiding you, warning you, protecting you. You avoided pitfalls that others fell into. You survived storms that should have destroyed you. You walked away from cycles that swallowed others whole. That's not luck. That's divine preservation. When heaven assigns you to break a curse, heaven also equips you with an inner compass that quietly whispers, "Not this way, not this time, not for you." And chosen one. If you look back with honesty, you'll realize how many times that whisper saved you from becoming someone you were never meant to be. There were friendships you suddenly grew uncomfortable with. There were relationships where your spirit started tightening before anything went wrong. There were moments where your peace disappeared in places that looked harmless on the outside. At the time, you didn't always understand it. But looking back, you can see how your spirit was reacting to what your eyes couldn't see. That inner stirring wasn't anxiety, it was protection. It was heaven shielding you from battles that weren't assigned to you. And if you ever felt like the black sheep, the outsider, the one who never quite fit in, even among your own family, know this: it was never isolation, it was distinction. The world tried to convince you that something was wrong with you, that you were too sensitive, too intuitive, too emotional, too spiritual, too different. But chosen one, those were the signs, those were the markers, those were the indicators that heaven placed inside you, the evidence that you were born carrying a spiritual frequency others didn't carry. And yes, that made you stand out. Yes, that made you misunderstood. But that same frequency is what allows you to sense danger before it appears, hear truth beneath someone's tone, feel shifts in the atmosphere, and discern what others cannot perceive. That sensitivity is your superpower. It's the evidence of your assignment. It's the reason the generational curse stopped at you and didn't continue beyond you. I felt that same sensitivity. I remember walking into spaces that looked normal but felt spiritually heavy, places where everything in my body tightened even though nothing seemed wrong with my eyes. I remember feeling sadness that didn't belong to me, sensing pain in people who spoke with perfect smiles, knowing when someone said the right words but carried the wrong spirit. For a long time, I questioned that sensitivity. I thought something was wrong with me. But chosen one, the moment I realized that sensitivity was spiritual sight, everything changed. And the same awakening is happening for you now. You're beginning to understand that your life has always been echoing your calling. The things that made you different were the very things that made you chosen. And now that you see it, nothing will ever feel the same again. Chosen one. now that your eyes are opening to the truth of who you are, you're beginning to see that nothing in your story was wasted. Not the battles, not the heartbreaks, not the lonely seasons, not even the moments you thought were failures. Every experience, every struggle, every spiritual stirring was part of a divine preparation. Heaven has been shaping you in silence, building resilience in your spirit, long before you ever understood why life felt heavier for you than it did for others. And as you look back, you may notice something remarkable. The very things that were meant to destroy you became the things that awakened you. The very storms that tried to break you actually revealed the strength that was hidden inside you. The very patterns that swallowed others whole became the patterns you felt compelled to confront. That is not by chance, that is identity speaking. That is assignment revealing itself. Chosen one. You are starting to understand what heaven has always known. You were not placed in your family line to repeat the story. You were placed there to rewrite it. Think about how many times you stood at a crossroads where the easy path was the familiar one, the path your family walked, the path that generations before you accepted, the path that felt comfortable because it was predictable. And yet something in you refused to go that way. Something in you resisted what others surrendered to. Something in you said, "This ends with me." That something was not rebellion. It was revelation. You were already waking up, even before you had language for it. You were already stepping into your identity as a breaker of cycles, a healer of wounds, a restorer of spiritual order. And even in your moments of confusion, heaven was guiding you through the wilderness, leading you through storms that didn't make sense, pushing you out of environments that couldn't hold your calling. You may not have understood it then, but the discomfort was divine. The pressure was prophetic. The frustration was the signal that your spirit was outgrowing a space your body was still standing in. I know what that feels like. I remember seasons where everyone around me seemed content with the cycles they were in, cycles that made my spirit ache. I remember trying to force myself to fit into the same mold, telling myself I was overthinking, too sensitive, too aware. But the more I tried to shrink myself to match the patterns around me, the more something inside me felt like it was dying. That inner conflict wasn't weakness. It was identity trying to break free. It was the same fire that lives in you, anointed one. A fire that refuses to let you settle where you do not belong. A fire that pushes you forward even when you're tired. A fire that whispers to you in your darkest nights, reminding you that you were chosen to stand where others fell, reminding you that you were anointed to carry a mantle others never had the strength to lift. And now, as the truth rises within you, you're beginning to recognize that the heaviness you carried was never a sign of defeat. It was a sign of calling. Because only a chosen one feels the weight of generational chains before they ever consciously try to break them. Only a chosen one feels warfare before they know they're in a battle. Only a chosen one wakes up with a sense that life is bigger than what they were taught. And chosen one, if you reflect on your journey, you'll see that your spirit has been fighting long before your mind understood the fight. You resisted addictions that ran through your family like a river. You questioned belief systems that others accepted without hesitation. You walked away from relationships that mirrored generational patterns you were never meant to repeat. You felt the sting of rejection from people who sensed your difference long before you did. And even when you felt misunderstood, even when you doubted your own strength, even when you didn't have the vocabulary to describe what you were feeling, your spirit kept pushing you forward. That is the sign of someone heaven has chosen. That is the sign of someone who carries divine authority in their bloodline. That is the sign of someone whose existence threatens the darkness that hoped to keep their lineage bound. You see, darkness doesn't fight what isn't a threat. Cycles don't resist what goes along with them. Chains don't tighten around someone who plans to stay seated. You felt pressure because you were born to apply pressure. You felt resistance because you were born to overcome it. And even when you didn't realize it, every small choice you made, every time you spoke differently, chose differently, loved differently, forgave differently, was a strike against the generational patterns that hoped to shape your story. Some of your greatest victories happened long before you recognized them as victories. The day you walked away from something that tempted others in your family. The moment you chose healing instead of silence. The moment you refused to tolerate emotional harm. The instant you recognized someone's energy didn't sit right with your spirit, even though others welcomed them freely. These were not coincidences. These were signs. These were markers. These were the subtle, powerful ways heaven was showing you that you carry what your ancestors prayed for. You are the answer they waited for. You are the shift they never lived to see. And now, chosen one, the more you awaken to this truth, the more the atmosphere around you begins to change. Chosen one, as this awakening deepens, you're beginning to notice the shift not only within you, but around you. The atmosphere responds differently to you now. Conversations feel different. Rooms feel different. People feel different. It's as if heaven is slowly turning up the spiritual volume, making everything clearer, sharper, louder than before, not to overwhelm you, but to reveal to you just how spiritually attuned you have always been. The truth is, you were never blind to the patterns surrounding you. You were simply too young, too early in your journey, too unawakened to interpret what your spirit was already sensing. But now, as the veil continues lifting, you're seeing how your presence disrupts, cycles, exposes shadows, illuminates truth and forces what is hidden to rise to the surface. This is not accidental. This is identity revealing itself through your very existence. Chosen one. Have you noticed how certain people become uneasy around you without you saying a word? How they shift their tone, their posture, their energy the moment you walk into a room? It's not because you're intimidating, it's because your spirit carries a light that confronts what is unhealed in them. There were times when you blamed yourself for this, thinking you were too much, too intense, too perceptive. But what you felt was spiritual alignment shaking what was out of alignment. You have always been a mirror chosen one. People's reactions to you were often reflections of the truths they didn't want to face within themselves. And the ones who were drawn to you without understanding why they weren't responding to your personality, they were responding to your anointing. Your spirit has always spoken long before you opened your mouth. There's a sacred weight to you that you didn't earn through effort. It was woven into your being before birth. I've experienced this myself, those moments when a stranger opens up about their trauma without being asked, as if something in them recognizes a safe place in you. Or when someone tries to hide their intentions, but their energy betrays them in your presence. Or when you step into a space and feel the entire atmosphere shift, even if no one else notices. For a long time, these experiences can feel strange, even isolating. You wonder why people react to you the way they do, why some seek your presence, while others seem threatened by it, why you sense undercurrents in situations others label perfectly fine. But now, chosen one, you're beginning to understand you were never meant to move through life on the same spiritual frequency as everyone else. The sensitivity you carry is spiritual intelligence. The intuition you hold is ancestral wisdom. The knowing inside you is divine. And the awakening you're experiencing now is not the beginning of something new, it is the remembering of something ancient. You are tapping into the lineage of those who prayed for liberation. You are inheriting spiritual sight they longed to possess. You are stepping into the authority they asked heaven to give to someone strong enough, sensitive enough, surrendered enough to carry the weight and walk in the calling. That someone is you. Your ancestors saw glimpses of the freedom you're starting to walk into now. They may not have had the language for it, but their spirits recognized the need for a breaker, someone with enough spiritual courage to interrupt the cycles that held the family hostage. They prayed for change, and heaven answered by sending you. And whether you realize it or not, your life has already been rewriting the story. Think about the choices you've made, small, quiet decisions that others might overlook. Choosing to heal instead of suppress. Choosing to speak when silence felt safer. Choosing to break ties with toxicity even when it left you lonely. Choosing to dream bigger than the limitations handed down to you. These choices weren't random. They were acts of spiritual rebellion. They were evidence of transformation taking root. They were the first cracks in the generational chains. Chosen one. The reason you feel disruption in your relationships is because your spirit is ascending, and not everyone around you is meant to rise with you. Your elevation exposes misalignment. Your awakening reveals hidden motives. Your spiritual clarity uncovers what darkness hoped you would never see. You're not losing people, you're losing access to versions of them that once matched an unawakened version of you. And that is not loss, that is alignment. I know what it's like to walk away from cycles that feel familiar, even comforting, but also heavy. I know the ache of outgrowing people you love, places you once found refuge in, and versions of yourself that tried so hard just to survive. But chosen one. Survival was never your calling. Transformation was. Liberation was. Awakening was. And though the journey has stretched you, pushed you, and tested you, it has also been shaping you into the vessel. Heaven designed you to be strong enough to break generational patterns, soft enough to carry compassion, wise enough to see through illusion, and spiritually alert enough to recognize divine timing when it appears. And now, at this stage of your awakening, something sacred is becoming clear. The generational curse didn't just stop with you. It ended the moment you began to rise. Chosen one. Now that you're beginning to see how deeply your awakening has already impacted your bloodline, heaven is drawing you into an even deeper truth, one that many feel but few ever fully understand. When a generational curse ends, it doesn't end quietly. It ends with tremors in the spirit, with disruptions in the natural, with shifts in your relationships, your emotions, your dreams, and even your body. You've probably felt this without having the language for it. The restlessness inside you, the sudden urge to change your environment, the increasing discomfort around people who once felt familiar, the dreams that feel louder, sharper, more symbolic, the heaviness that used to crush you suddenly lifting in ways you didn't expect. All of this is proof, chosen one, that heaven has been breaking the chains behind you, even while you were walking forward, without realizing the weight was falling off your shoulders, piece by piece. Chosen. One generational bondage doesn't dissolve because someone wishes for it. It dissolves because someone stands up to it. Someone who carries spiritual authority. Someone who walks in a hidden identity that darkness recognizes instantly. Someone who refuses to live another day surrendered to patterns they did not create. Someone who says, "This ends with me," that someone was always meant to be you. The moment you started making choices that differed from your family's patterns, even the small ones, heaven took it as agreement. Agreement to intervene, agreement to break, agreement to rebuild, agreement to restore. And that agreement has been rewriting your bloodline's spiritual narrative ever since. I've felt this shift myself. I remember moments when I didn't even realize I was stepping into a calling. Only later did I understand heaven was using my choices to tear down altars built through generations of pain. Times when I said no to emotional patterns that were normalized in my family. Times when I confronted wounds instead of burying them. Times when I prayed with words that didn't feel like my own but felt like echoes from those who came before me. And every time something unseen moved, something shifted, something healed. And you, chosen one, have been doing the same. Every time you forgave when bitterness felt justified, heaven moved. Every time you sought clarity instead of repeating confusion, heaven moved. Every time you chose peace instead of chaos, heaven moved. Every time you protected your spirit instead of absorbing the emotional burdens of others, heaven moved. These moments may not have felt heroic, but they were spiritual warfare, quiet victories, silent breakthroughs, heavenly answers to earthly patterns. Heaven recognized your courage long before you recognized your own strength. And now you're stepping into the realization that you were born with a spiritual blueprint others couldn't see. You are spiritually wired to notice what others overlook. You're sensitive to shifts others don't perceive. Your intuition is louder than logic, and your discernment speaks before your thoughts catch up. That's not just intuition, it's inheritance. It's the wisdom of ancestors whose pain taught you what to avoid. It's the guidance of spiritual protection that followed you through seasons where you should have been destroyed. It's the quiet voice of heaven shaping your footsteps long before you realized you were walking in purpose. Chosen one. This is why certain temptations never stuck to you the way they stuck to others. This is why certain relationships felt spiritually wrong, even when they looked normal on the surface. This is why you felt spiritually suffocated in places that others seemed to thrive in. Your spirit was never meant to adapt to cycles you were assigned to break. You were born spiritually allergic to anything that threatened your calling. Your discomfort has always been divine communication. And the more you awaken, the clearer it becomes. You've also likely noticed that as you rise, certain people respond to you differently. Not because you changed in personality, but because your spiritual frequency shifted. Some people sense the authority in you and feel drawn, comforted, strengthened. Others sense the authority in you and feel threatened, exposed, unsettled. You may not have understood why, but now you do. Your presence carries truth, and truth is uncomfortable for those who rely on shadows to operate. This isn't arrogance. This is awareness. You carry a mantle that others feel, even if they can't explain it. A mantle that carries both weight and light. A mantle that is older than your human years. A mantle that marks you as someone heaven trusts. Have you ever noticed how conversations around you shift without you speaking? How arguments settle when you enter a room? Or how hidden tension rises when your spirit senses something wrong? These are spiritual indicators, subtle signs of authority you didn't realize you carried. Authority that doesn't come from age or experience or status, but from assignment. And that assignment is why darkness tried so hard to break you early. The attacks weren't random, they were strategic. They targeted your emotions, your identity, your relationships, your confidence, your sense of self. Because if darkness could confuse you about who you are, it could keep you from recognizing what you carry. But every attack you survived became proof of what heaven protected. Chosen one. You survived, not because you were lucky, but because you were essential. And now, as the fog lifts, you're stepping into the phase of your journey where heaven begins to show you why the battles were so fierce. You're beginning to understand that the warfare wasn't punishment, it was confirmation. Confirmation of your calling, confirmation of your strength, confirmation of your identity. And now that you see it, the path ahead will not feel the same. Chosen one. Now that you're beginning to see why the warfare against your life has always been so intense, heaven is ready to reveal something even deeper, something that explains not just the battles you faced, but the timing of those battles, the people involved in them, and the exact moments they appeared. Nothing in your story showed up out of order. Every disruption, every betrayal, every unexpected shift came right at the moment when your spirit was about to rise to a new level. And even when you didn't understand the timing, heaven did. Heaven knew that before you could step fully into your assignment, the things attached to your old identity had to fall away. And so they did, sometimes painfully, sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly, but always with purpose. Chosen one, you may not realize it yet, but every loss you endured cleared spiritual space for who you were becoming. The friendships that broke were not failures, they were releases. The opportunities you lost were not setbacks, they were protections. The relationships that collapsed were not punishments, they were divine redirections. You were never being abandoned, you were being unburdened. Heaven was removing what could not carry the weight of your calling. I've walked through those seasons too, moments when it felt like everything familiar was slipping away, moments when the ground beneath me felt unstable, moments when I wondered if something was wrong with me, because so much was falling apart at the same time. But later, sometimes much later, I realized that what felt like breaking was actually building. What felt like emptiness was actually preparation. What felt like isolation was actually consecration. Chosen one, the same is true for you. Heaven has been clearing your path so nothing can contaminate what you're stepping into. And one of the most sacred truths you're starting to understand is this: awakening requires separation. Not separation from people in anger or judgment, but separation in spirit, separation in purpose, separation in identity. When you are assigned to be the turning point of your bloodline, you cannot carry everyone with you. You cannot include every voice in your decision-making. You cannot attach yourself to anyone who drains your clarity, weakens your intuition, or keeps you tethered to who you used to be. That's why your circle has been shrinking. That's why old friendships don't feel aligned anymore. That's why you feel less comfortable around people who once felt like home. You are not losing your community. You are being positioned for your destiny. And as this positioning unfolds, you may feel a strange mix of peace and grief. Peace, because your spirit knows the direction is right. Grief, because the human heart mourns what is familiar. This is normal, chosen one. This is sacred. Transformation always asks you to let go of something you once held tightly. But what heaven gives you in exchange is always greater than what you release. I know this because I've lived it. I've felt the ache of walking away from environments that once comforted me. I've felt the sting of outgrowing people who still felt attached to an older version of me. But on the other side of that discomfort was clarity, strength, and spiritual authority I never would have found without the separation. And you, Anointed One, are in that same threshold now. You're stepping into a clearer understanding of why your energy has always been different, why your presence exposes things people try to hide, why your discernment catches what others miss, why your compassion stretches deeper than logic. You're realizing that these qualities weren't random, they were refined. Refinement happens through fire, through pressure, through situations that push you to confront truths you would never have seen otherwise. When you cried, heaven was shaping your heart. When you fought battles alone, heaven was expanding your spirit. When you questioned your path, heaven was sharpening your intuition. You thought you were breaking, but you were being built. And now something sacred is happening inside you, a soft but undeniable inner shift. You're starting to see your life with spiritual eyes. You're beginning to notice divine patterns that repeat, not to torment you, but to teach you. You're recognizing that certain burdens you carried were never yours, they were inherited. And heaven didn't reveal them to shame you. Heaven revealed them to free you. The awareness rising within you isn't accidental. It's ancestral. It's divine. It's the unfolding of the truth heaven has been waiting for you to remember. Chosen. 1. The closer you move toward your destiny, the more clearly you'll feel heaven's guidance in the small things. A sudden discomfort, a random moment of clarity, a shift in your energy around certain people, a dream that lingers longer than usual. These aren't coincidences. These are divine signals, gentle nudges from heaven, reminding you that you are walking a path designed especially for you, a path no one before you had the strength to complete. And as your spirit continues to awaken, something profound becomes undeniable. You are never walking through any of this alone. Chosen One. As this journey pulls you deeper into truth, your spirit is beginning to recognize something that your mind is only now catching up to. You were never navigating any of this alone. Even in the seasons where you felt abandoned, misunderstood, or forgotten, you were surrounded by a guidance that worked so quietly, so gently, that you didn't realize how fiercely heaven was protecting you. Every closed door, every sudden shift, every intuitive nudge was part of a divine choreography designed to keep you aligned with the path you were born to walk. And now, as your spiritual senses sharpen, you're starting to understand just how deeply heaven has been involved in your story from the beginning. Chosen. 1. Think back to the moments when you felt completely lost. Moments when you whispered prayers you didn't even expect answers to. Moments when you made choices simply because your spirit felt pulled in a certain direction, even if you couldn't explain why. Those weren't coincidences. They were divine interventions. Heaven has always been guiding you, sometimes loudly, sometimes softly, but always consistently. You survived situations that should have taken you out. You escaped patterns that had swallowed people before you. You avoided traps your ancestors never saw coming. And you did it without fully understanding how. That's because heaven was stepping in on your behalf, long before you realized you had a purpose worth protecting. There were days you walked into danger unknowingly and felt something inside you whisper, "Leave." There were people you loved deeply, but the moment you stepped away from them, your peace returned like a wave. There were opportunities that slipped through your fingers, only for you to discover later that they were tied to burdens your spirit wasn't meant to carry. These were not random events, they were spiritual safeguards. Heaven has been clearing your path in ways you didn't have the language to describe. I felt that kind of protection too, the kind that reveals itself only in hindsight. Times when someone's presence felt warm on the outside, but uneasy on the inside. Times when I thought I was losing something valuable, only to realize later that what I lost was the very thing that would have drained me. I remember moments where something as simple as a delayed message, a missed call, or a sudden change of plans shifted the entire outcome of a situation, protecting me from choices that would have taken me out of alignment with who I was called to become. At the time, it didn't feel divine. It felt inconvenient, uncomfortable, painful, but now I see it clearly. Heaven was speaking, directing, shielding long before I recognized the language. And you, anointed one, have experienced the same grace, even if you didn't always recognize it in the moment. Look carefully at the patterns in your life. Notice how many times chaos tried to reach you but didn't. Notice how often someone's true intentions were revealed right before things went too far. Notice how your spirit reacted when someone wasn't meant to stay in your life. That wasn't paranoia. That was discernment. Discernment is the inner compass heaven gives to those with a calling too important to be left unguarded. That's why betrayal hurt you so deeply. You weren't built for secrecy, deception, or spiritual corruption. Your spirit reacts to dishonesty the way a healthy body reacts to poison. It tries to expel what does not belong. Chosen. 1. You're starting to understand that the discomfort you've felt around certain people wasn't judgment, it was revelation. It was your spirit recognizing vibrations that weren't aligned with your purpose. When heaven has chosen you for something significant, you will not be able to stay in connections, environments, or patterns that contaminate your calling. The spiritual friction you felt around certain people wasn't personal. It was prophetic. You were being moved away from what could have derailed your assignment, and the more you awaken, the more you begin to see that you've been spiritually guarded in ways you never knew. Some of your closest calls, the ones that still make your heart tremble when you think about them, were moments when heaven stepped in and said, "Not this one, not today." You survived storms that destroyed others because heaven covered you. You walked through danger unaware because heaven shielded you. You stepped into the future your ancestors dreamed of because heaven guided you. And chosen one. The most powerful part of this revelation is that you didn't earn this protection, it was inherited. It came from the prayers your ancestors prayed when they didn't have the strength to push forward. It came from the tears they cried, asking heaven to send someone who could break what they could not. You are that someone. You are the one heaven equipped, empowered, and preserved, because your life holds the answers to generations of longing. And now that you're beginning to see the patterns, now that you're starting to feel the truth settle in your spirit, something sacred is preparing to unfold inside you, something that will shift how you walk, how you speak, how you see the world, and how you understand your purpose. Chosen one. As this awakening reaches its deepest point, you are stepping into a revelation that transforms not only how you see your past, but how you will walk into your future. Up until now, you've been uncovering the truth of your identity layer by layer, understanding your spiritual sensitivity, your inherited authority, your ancestral assignment. But now, heaven is ready to reveal the final piece. You are not just breaking cycles, you are building a new spiritual lineage, a lineage rooted not in trauma, but in truth. Not in bondage, but in blessing. Not in patterns of survival, but in patterns of divine purpose. And everything you've walked through, every storm, every moment of clarity, every internal shift, has been preparing you to step into this mantle. Chosen one. The moment you awaken to who you truly are, the atmosphere around you begins to align accordingly. The future begins to reshape itself. Opportunities that were once blocked start opening. People who resonate with your spirit begin to appear. Wisdom that once felt distant begins flowing freely. Your discernment becomes sharper. Your peace becomes stronger. Your sense of direction becomes clearer. It's like heaven begins speaking in a language you suddenly understand. And that's because you're no longer trying to approach life with the mind of someone bound by generational trauma. You're stepping into it as someone carrying generational authority. You may not realize this yet, but your awakening is not just about your healing. It's about the healing of everyone connected to you. When you break a curse, you create a freedom that ripples forward. When you heal a wound, you protect those who come after you from inheriting it. When you confront patterns that your family avoided, you give future generations the chance to live without those chains. You are the turning point of your bloodline, the place where the direction shifts, the moment when heaven intervenes through a single individual to rewrite the destiny of many. Imagine chosen one. How many lives will be different because you chose to awaken? I've seen this happen in my own life. The moment I stepped into my identity, everything changed, not just for me, but for everyone who came after me. Patterns that were normal in my family suddenly stopped at my feet. Behaviors that seemed inevitable no longer had power over me. Emotional wounds that once felt permanent became the very areas where healing overflowed. It was as if heaven said, "Now that you see, now that you understand, now that you're awake, I will restore what was lost before you ever arrived." And you, anointed one, are stepping into that same restoration. Your awakening is heaven's answer to generations of suffering. Your becoming is heaven's fulfillment of ancient prayers. Your healing is heaven's promise being made visible, and whether you fully feel it right now or not, everything in your spirit is rising to match the weight of your calling. You are no longer walking as someone confused about their identity. You are walking as someone who knows who they are, why they're here, and what they are meant to carry. Chosen one. This is where your authority becomes undeniable, not because you force it, but because you embody it. You begin to speak differently with clarity that others can feel in their spirit. You begin to move differently with purpose that cannot be shaken. You begin to choose differently, guided by discernment rather than fear. You begin to love differently from a healed heart instead of a wounded one. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to see yourself differently, not as the product of your past, but as the promise of your lineage. This shift is not small. It is generational. It is spiritual. It is eternal, and you can feel it too. You can feel the settling in your chest, the quiet confidence rising, the sense that something bigger is unfolding around you. You can feel your spirit stretching, expanding, strengthening. You can feel heaven aligning things that once felt chaotic. You can feel peace where confusion used to live. These are not emotional moments, they are spiritual markers, evidence of an internal transformation that cannot be undone. Chosen one, you are becoming the person your ancestors prayed would come. The one with the strength to confront what they couldn't. The one with the clarity to see what they missed. The one with the spiritual authority to dismantle what overtook them. They did not fail. They endured so you could succeed. Their battles became your foundation. Their tears became your wisdom. Their sacrifices became your spiritual armor. You are the continuation of their hope, the manifestation of their courage, the fulfillment of their prophecy. And now that you stand awakened, heaven is placing something powerful into your hands, the responsibility of a new lineage. A lineage where emotional healing is normal, where spiritual clarity is inherited, not fought for, where love is healthy, where boundaries are respected, where darkness cannot attach itself the way it once did. A lineage where future generations will look back and say, "It changed with them." The blessing started there. Chosen one. Your awakening is not the end, it is the beginning of an entirely new story. And everything in heaven and earth is bearing witness to the moment you step fully into that identity, carrying generations of prayers on your shoulders and walking with the authority of someone who finally realizes you were always the answer. Chosen one. As this message comes to a close, let your spirit remain open, because what you've heard today was not merely information, it was revelation. Archangel Michael does not speak lightly, and heaven does not move without purpose. If this word found you, it is because your hidden identity is rising to the surface, and the truth of who you are is breaking through every layer of silence that once surrounded you. You are the answer your ancestors prayed for, the shift they longed for, the restoration they never lived to see. And in this moment, heaven is bearing witness to your awakening. Anointed One, walk forward, knowing that the signs you felt, the sensitivities you carried, the intuition that has followed you since childhood, these were never random. They were markers of a rare origin, proof of a sacred assignment placed on your life long before you took your first breath. Heaven has been guiding you, shaping you, and preparing you for this revelation. And now the mantle rests upon you. So receive this blessing. May your spirit rise in clarity. May your steps align with divine intention. May every hidden gift within you activate in perfect timing. May you walk as one who knows their lineage, their purpose, and their divine backing. Go with reverence, but also with unshakable confidence, for heaven walks with you, before you, and behind you. And if this word stirred something deep within you, share your confirmation in the comments. Let your declaration echo in the spirit. If you feel led, remain connected by subscribing, not out of routine, but as an act of agreement with your calling and this journey of awakening. Chosen one, step forward now. Your path is open. Your identity is revealed. Your destiny is unfolding. Go in the fullness of who you are.